Welcome back to another video. Out here in the wild, the wind doesn't just carry dust, it carries stories. Stories of men who gave without asking, and found themselves standing before fate itself. Tonight's story is about a quiet, young rancher named Elias Boone, a man who had never touched a gun, never kissed a woman, and never turned away anyone in need. One freezing winter night, he saw a native woman trembling by his fence, barefoot, lost, and cold as the grave. He didn't know her name. He didn't ask where she came from. He simply took off his jacket and placed it on her shoulders. But the next morning, when the sun rose over the frosted plains, 200 Apache warriors stood outside his ranch. And what happened after that would change Dust Valley forever. The wind that night cut sharper than a blade. Snow whipped across the open plains like sheets of glass, and every wooden beam on Elias Boone's ranch groaned under the weight of winter. He had spent the evening patching a hole in the barn roof, his hands raw, his breath forming clouds in the dark. The nearest town was 30 miles away, and the only company he kept was the creaking of his old windmill and the moan of the cold. Elias wasn't a man of many words. At 27, he'd never taken a wife, never joined a fight, and never stepped beyond the borders of Dust Valley. Folks called him the Quiet Rancher, a name he didn't mind. He liked quiet. Quiet didn't judge. But that night, quiet ended. It started with a faint sound, like someone knocking softly against the wooden fence outside. He thought it was the wind, until it came again. Thump, thump. Elias grabbed his lantern, the golden light trembling in his gloved hand, and stepped out into the cold. Snow crunched beneath his boots. The ranch stretched out before him, silent and endless, the moonlight reflecting off the frost. Then he saw her. A figure slumped against his outer fence, barefoot, wrapped in torn deerskin, her hair wild with snow. She was young, maybe his age, maybe less. Her skin glowed faintly in the lantern light, and her arms trembled violently. Elias rushed to her. "Ma'am?" He called over the wind. No answer. Only a faint breath that clouded the air between them. He knelt beside her, lifting her gently by the shoulders. Her lips were blue. "You'll freeze out here," he muttered, pulling off his own jacket and wrapping it around her. Her eyes fluttered open, dark, deep, and full of something he couldn't name. For a moment they just stared at each other. Then, in a trembling whisper, she said one word. "Cold." Elias tightened the jacket around her and helped her to her feet. "Come on, my cabin's close." She didn't resist. Her legs barely held her weight, and twice she stumbled. Elias half carried her through the snow, his breath quick and heavy as he kicked open the door to his cabin. Inside, the warmth of the small fireplace embraced them. He guided her to the chair near the fire, then tossed in another log. Flames leapt higher, bathing the room in orange light. He looked at her again. She was shaking, her hands clutching his jacket as if it were her last tie to life itself. Elias poured water from the kettle and handed her a tin cup. "Here, drink slow." She hesitated, then took it, her fingers brushing his. Her hands were ice. Elias turned away, trying not to notice how small she looked wrapped in his jacket, how the firelight caught the edge of her cheekbones, how her eyes, dark and unreadable, seemed to carry a lifetime of pain. He cleared his throat. "You from one of the camps east?" No answer. "I can take you back when the snow lets up." Still nothing. She just stared into the fire, silent, her breath steadying. Then suddenly she whispered, "They'll come." Elias frowned. "Who'll come?" She didn't look at him. "The ones who hunt." He blinked, trying to make sense of it. "You mean wolves?" But the way she shook her head told him otherwise. "Not wolves, not animals." Mentee Elias leaned forward. "Why are they after you?" She finally turned to him. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, but it cut through the room like a blade. "Because I took something that was never meant to leave the mountain." Before he could ask more, a gust of wind slammed the cabin door open, scattering snow inside. She flinched, clutching the cup tightly. Elias stood, grabbing his rifle instinctively. Nothing but snow outside. No movement, but the sound. Far off, in the distance, came a faint echo, the haunting rhythm of drums. Elias stepped outside, the rifle steady in his hands, scanning the horizon. The snow had slowed, and in the faint moonlight he could see the shapes of mountains in the far north. The sound was coming from there, He closed the door again, heart pounding. When he turned, the woman was standing now, straight and still, her eyes reflecting the firelight. She said quietly, "They will come at sunrise." Elias frowned. "Who?" Her voice was low, calm, certain. "My people," he stared at her. "You mean the Apache?" She nodded. "And when they see what you did for me, they will decide what kind of man you truly are." Elias didn't sleep that night. He sat by the fire, rifle across his knees, while the strange woman rested on his cot. Outside, the wind died down, and the snow turned silver under the moonlight. At dawn, he rose and stepped out to feed the horses. The air was still, the frost crunching under his boots. But then, a sound broke the silence. A distant rumble. He turned toward the fence line, and his heart froze, stretching across the plains as far as his eyes could see. Were riders, 200 warriors on horseback, feathered headdresses gleaming in the rising sun, spears and rifles glinting in their hands. They sat in silence, unmoving, a wall of power and purpose, and at their front, the same woman from his cabin now stood tall upon a painted horse, wearing his jacket over her shoulders. Elias stepped forward, the cold biting through his shirt. He had no idea whether this was the beginning of his end, or the start of something much greater. The morning light poured over the frozen plains, painting everything gold. The air was still and too still. Only the sound of horses breathing filled the silence. Elias Boone stood on his porch, boots half buried in snow, staring at the line of warriors that stretched to the horizon. 200 riders, faces painted, feathers swaying in the breeze. Their horses pawed at the ground, steam rising from their nostrils, and at their front on a pale brown Mustang sat her. The same woman from the night before, though now she looked nothing like the lost, shivering soul he had found in the storm. She sat straight, proud, her hair braided with beads and feathers, his worn ranch jacket still around her shoulders. The man beside her, a tall, muscular warrior with a silver band across his chest and a headdress that caught the light, stepped forward. His horse snorted as he pulled it closer. Elias didn't move. He simply said, voice steady, "I reckon you're here for her." The warrior dismounted in one swift motion. Boots hit the snow. He walked forward, slow, deliberate. The air between them thickened with tension. "I am Chief Tohama," the man said in a deep, steady voice, "leader of the Red Hawk clan. The woman you sheltered is my daughter." Elias blinked. "Your daughter?" Tohama's eyes burned like embers. "She broke our law. She took something sacred and brought it to the lands of white men." Elias tightened his grip on his rifle. "She was dying in the cold. I only gave her shelter. That's all." Tohama's gaze shifted to the cabin, smoke curling gently from its chimney. "And my daughter now wears your jacket." "Do you know what that means, rancher?" Elias hesitated. "It means she was freezing." But the warriors behind the chief murmured something, a low ripple of voices, heavy and disapproving. Tohama stepped closer. "In our ways, a man who gives his garment to a woman gives her his honor, his protection, his bond." Elias frowned. "You're saying—" The chief's jaw tightened. "You have declared her as yours." For a long, cold moment, Elias couldn't speak. He looked from the chief to the young woman, who sat silently on her horse, watching him with unreadable eyes. "I didn't mean no harm," he finally said. "Didn't mean anything like that." The chief raised his chin. "Meaning does not matter. The spirits heard what your heart said, even if your mouth did not. Now you must stand before our council and be judged." Elias let out a dry laugh, disbelief mixing with fear. "Judged for keeping someone from freezing to death?" "To the Great Spirit," said Tohama quietly. "Every act carries a weight. Some hearts save, others steal." Elias's jaw clenched. "Then tell your council I ain't got a heart worth stealing." The chief didn't react. Instead, he turned to his warriors and raised one hand. At once, 30 of them rode forward, their horses fanning out like a wave of fire-colored leather and feathers. Elias stepped back, hand near his rifle. "I ain't looking for trouble." The chief met his eyes. "Neither are we. But when a man touches the ways of our people, he must walk their path. You will come with us." Elias shook his head. "Not a chance. This is my land." A voice broke the tension, soft, female, and firm. "Please, Elias," it was her. The young woman dismounted and walked toward him, snow crunching under her boots. Up close, she seemed both fierce and fragile, like someone born of the wild, yet caught between two worlds. Her eyes met his. If you refuse, they will see it as defiance, and defiance means blood. Elias glanced past her at the line of riders, hands near their spears, then back at her. What's your name? She hesitated. Ayana, he nodded slowly. Ayana, I saved your life. I don't owe anyone else a damn thing. I know, she whispered. But now they owe you, and that's dangerous. He frowned. What do you mean? Because when a man saves a chief's daughter, she said softly, he becomes part of the story, whether he wants it or not. By afternoon, the snow had melted into a dull slush. Elias rode beside Ayana as they made their way toward the mountains, surrounded by the Red Hawk warriors. They passed through canyons painted in rust and gold, the echo of hooves bouncing off stone walls. Elias's ranch grew smaller behind them, until it vanished into the horizon. He couldn't help but notice the way Ayana moved. Calm, confident, her eyes scanning the horizon like she'd been born from the earth itself. Finally, he broke the silence. You said you took something. From the mountain. What was it? Ayana's gaze hardened. A promise, Elias raised an eyebrow. That's not something you can steal. She looked at him then, a quiet sadness in her voice. You'd be surprised how many men have died trying. He didn't press further. Something in her tone told him that whatever promise she meant, it wasn't something human. As the sun began to set, they reached the base of a towering canyon. Smoke rose from fires ahead, and Elias saw dozens more tents. Families, children, old men. The Red Hawk village. Drums started again. The same haunting rhythm he had heard the night before. Men painted in ochre and ash watched him pass, their eyes sharp and cold. They led him to a large circle of stones near the fire. At its center stood the chief. Tohama of the Red Hawk, said one of the elders, his voice deep and solemn. We bring before you the white man who gave his garment to your daughter. Elias stood tall. Though his heart pounded, Tohama looked at him. Elias Boone, do you stand by your choice? Do you claim the woman as your own before the spirits? Elias's mouth went dry. I told you, I just gave her my jacket. But before the chief could speak, Ayana stepped forward. Her eyes met Elias's, steady and clear. I do, Elias turned sharply. You what? She took a breath. I claim him. Before my people. Before the spirits. Gasps rippled through the circle. The chief's expression darkened. Ayana, do you know what you say? She nodded. If I must pay the price for leaving the mountain, let me pay it as one who is not alone. Elias stared at her, speechless. The chief raised his hand. The drums fell silent. Then so it shall be, he said, voice echoing through the canyon. At sunrise, the spirits will decide whether this bond is sacred or cursed. That night, as Elias sat beside the fire under the endless desert sky, Ayana sat a few feet away, quiet, unreadable. Finally, he spoke. You could have told them the truth. She turned to him. Would they have believed it? He stared into the flames. No, probably not. Ayana's voice was soft. Then it's better to let the spirits decide. They don't lie. Elias looked at her, at the flicker of firelight dancing in her eyes. Something in him shifted. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about his ranch, his fences, or the silence he used to love. He was thinking about her, and the storm that was coming with the dawn. The dawn came with the sound of drums, slow, heavy, ancient. The Red Hawk tribe gathered in a wide circle near the canyon cliffs, where the wind sang through the stones like a whisper from another world. The sky was painted red and gold and a color of endings, or beginnings. Elias Boone stood at the center of that circle, stripped of his hat and rifle, his boots dusted with frost. Across from him stood Ayana, her dark hair braided with feathers and beads, her face calm, almost otherworldly in the rising light. The chief, her father Tohama, stood beside the sacred fire, a ring of stones and cedar wood that blazed brighter with every gust of wind. The air trembled with tension. Even the horses seemed to sense that what would happen here wasn't of men, but of spirits. Tohama raised his hand, and the drums stopped. He spoke, his deep voice echoing through the canyon. The white man gave warmth to my daughter. He crossed the line between our worlds, a line drawn in blood and sorrow. Now before the fire, the spirits will speak. They will show us his truth. Elias swallowed hard, trying not to show his fear. I didn't mean to cross any line. I only helped her. Tohama's gaze was sharp. Then your heart will protect you. Step forward. The warriors parted, leaving a clear path to the fire. Elias stepped closer, the heat of the flames licking his skin. Beside the fire sat an elder woman, her face marked with white paint, her eyes blind but bright with wisdom. She held 2 burning sticks crossed together like a star. She spoke in a low, rhythmic voice. If his spirit is true, the fire will bless. If his heart is false, the fire will burn. Ayana stepped forward too, her hands trembling slightly, though her eyes never left his. She whispered to him, "Don't be afraid. The fire knows more than we do." Elias gave a shaky smile. "That's what worries me." The elder motioned for him to kneel. He did. The flames danced higher, sparks swirling like ghosts in the morning wind. She pressed the burning sticks near his chest, not touching, but close enough that the heat seared his breath. Then she began to chant. The words were ancient, carried by the rhythm of the earth. Elias felt something strange, like the air thickened around him, heavy and alive. His vision blurred. The world melted away. He was no longer in the canyon. He was standing in the middle of a great plain under a burning red sky. Before him, a woman cloaked in feathers, her face hidden, her eyes glowing like the sun. She spoke in a voice that was both thunder and whisper. "Why did you give when you had nothing to gain?" Elias swallowed. Because she needed help. The woman's eyes narrowed. "Men help for silver, for pride, for reward. You helped for nothing?" "I didn't think," he said softly. "I just did what was right." The spirit moved closer, her presence overwhelming, warm and terrible. "Then your heart is not false. But it carries sorrow." Elias frowned. "Sorrow? You have lived without love, without touch, without belonging. You built fences around your heart, and now it has found a place to belong, though you do not yet see it." And before he could answer, the vision vanished. He was back by the fire, gasping for breath. The flames flickered wildly, turning from gold to deep blue, a sacred color. The tribe gasped. Even the chief's expression shifted. The elder woman's voice rang clear. "The fire does not burn him. The fire blesses him." Ayana stepped forward, relief washing across her face. Tohama's eyes softened, but his tone remained solemn. "The spirits have spoken. You are not our enemy, Elias Boone." Elias stood slowly, the tension leaving his shoulders. "Then I'm free to go?" The chief paused. "The spirits spared you, but they also bound you," Elias blinked. "Bound me?" Tohama gestured toward Ayana. "She is marked now, not by exile, but by destiny. The fire tied her fate to yours." Ayana's breath caught. "Father," Tohama raised his hand. "It is not my choice, daughter. The spirits chose for you both." Murmurs rippled through the gathered tribe. The words were heavy, ancient, older than their laws. Elias turned to her, voice low. "What does that mean?" She hesitated. "It means wherever your path leads, mine must follow." He stared at her, speechless. "I didn't ask for that." Her eyes were sad but steady. "Neither did I, but the fire doesn't ask." The tribe held a feast in silence. Fires crackled, meat roasted, drums beat softly. Elias sat alone near the edge of the camp, staring into the flames, still trying to understand what had happened. He had come to help a stranger. Now the spirits of a people he didn't belong to had tied his life to hers. Ayana approached quietly, sitting beside him. "You're angry," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "No, just lost," she smiled faintly. "Then maybe we're both lost, together." He looked at her, the firelight glinting off her eyes. "What happens now?" She took a deep breath. "Tomorrow the chief sends scouts to the western ridge. The Black Crow gang has been seen near the mountain again." Elias stiffened. "The same gang that hunts you?" She nodded. "They're after what I took, something the mountain spirit hid from them long ago. And if they find it?" Elias leaned closer. Then, her gaze turned distant, cold as the stars. "Then not even 200 warriors will stop the fire they'll bring." The drums outside grew louder, echoing off the canyon walls. The firelight danced on their faces, throwing long shadows into the night. For the first time, Elias realized this wasn't just about kindness anymore. It was about destiny, and come sunrise, Dust Valley would burn with it. The wind howled through Dust Valley that morning, a sound like ghosts crying through the cliffs. The Red Hawk camp stirred before sunrise. Horses snorted. Warriors painted their faces with ash and red clay. Spears glinted in the half-light. Elias Boone stood by the corral, tightening his saddle straps. His face was cut, his eyes hollow from a sleepless night. He looked at the horizon, the mountain peaks where the Black Crow gang was last seen. Ayanna approached, wrapped in a wolfskin cloak. Her braids fluttered in the wind. Around her neck hung a small pouch, the same one she had carried since Elias met her. "You don't have to come," she said quietly. "You've already done enough." Elias gave a tired smile. "You said the fire bound us. Guess I don't have much of a choice now, do I?" She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded, the faintest smile tugging her lips. "No, you don't." By noon, 200 Red Hawk warriors rode out, a storm of feathers and horses thundering across the desert plain. Dust rose behind them like smoke. At their head rode Chief Tohama, his spear raised, his eyes locked on the dark ridge ahead. The Black Crow gang had fortified the old silver mine at the mountain's base. Gunfire echoed faintly, a warning. Their black flags fluttered in the wind, marked with skulls and wings. Elias dismounted near a ridge and pulled out his rifle. "They've got good ground," he muttered. Tohama grunted. "And we have the wind." He turned to his warriors, voice booming. "The mountain has taken our brothers before, but today it will give them back in fire and thunder." The warriors roared, their voices rolling like thunder. Elias felt something stir in his chest. Pride, fear, and something else he couldn't name. Ayanna placed her hand on his arm. "When the battle starts, stay close to me," he frowned. "You planning something?" She looked toward the mountain, eyes glowing strangely in the light. "Yes, the spirit said the fire that saved you will burn again, but this time for all of us." Before he could ask what she meant, the first shots rang out. Bullets screamed through the air. The warriors charged down the slope, war cries echoing across the desert. Elias ducked behind a boulder, firing back. Smoke filled the air. Horses reared. The clash of steel and the roar of rifles turned the valley into chaos. Ayanna rode forward, fearless, her braid flying like a banner. Arrows streaked beside her. She raised her hand and shouted something in her native tongue. For a brief moment, the wind shifted, swirling, hot, alive. The flames from the warriors' torches leapt higher, almost unnatural. They raced along the ground like serpents, igniting dry brush, circling the enemy camp in a ring of fire. Elias blinked. "What the hell?" Tohama shouted over the noise. "The spirit fire." She called it. Inside the circle, the Black Crow gang panicked. Men screamed. Horses bolted. The heat grew unbearable. Elias ran through the chaos, searching for Ayanna. He found her near the mine entrance, clutching her pouch, the flames reflecting in her eyes. "What did you do?" he shouted. She turned to him, voice trembling but strong. The fire wanted to return what was stolen. "The Black Crows took something from the mountain, a spirit stone. If they keep it, more blood will fall." She opened the pouch. Inside, a small glowing stone pulsed like a heartbeat. Elias reached out. "Then throw it away!" "And this?" She shook her head. "If I return it, it takes me with it." Elias froze. "No." Tears glimmered on her cheeks, illuminated by the firelight. "The spirits tied my fate to yours. But they never said how it would end." The flames surged closer. Gunfire echoed. Smoke burned their lungs. He grabbed her shoulders. "We'll find another way," she smiled sadly. "You already did. You gave me warmth when I was cold. You gave me hope when I had none. Now let me give something back." Before he could stop her, she ran toward the mountain's heart, into the mouth of the burning mine. The light swallowed her, the earth shook. A thunderous crack split the ridge open. Flames erupted skyward, brighter than the sun, a pillar of gold and red that turned the whole valley into day. Every man, Apache and outlaw alike, fell silent, staring in awe. Then the fire faded, leaving nothing but ashes and silence. Elias staggered forward, calling her name. But the mine was gone, collapsed into molten stone. The chief approached slowly. "She returned the fire to the mountain," he said softly, "and became part of it." Elias fell to his knees. His hand shook. I should have stopped her. Tohama looked toward the distant horizon. You could not stop destiny, but she did not die, white man, not truly. He pointed toward the mountain peak. High above in the morning light, a red hawk circled the sky, its feathers glowing gold in the sun. She watches from the wind now, the chief said. The mountain keeps her spirit, and the fire keeps her promise. Months later, the ranch was quiet again. The fences were rebuilt. The cattle roamed freely. Elias sat by the porch, watching the sunset paint the desert gold. He still wore the same jacket, the one he'd given Ayana that cold night. Sometimes, when the wind rose through the canyon, he swore he could hear her voice, soft, carried by the breeze. Don't be afraid. The fire knows more than we do. He smiled faintly, tipping his hat toward the mountain. The red hawk soared above the ridge, wings outstretched, eternal in the fading light. And for the first time in years, the lonely rancher didn't feel alone.